gargantuan events are taking place in the UK today, just like they did yesterday. Brexit is taking place. Brexit is going on. I did a longer video on this yesterday, but I'm going to give a smaller bite-sized video just for people who just wants the basic of what's going on and don't really need the deep dive. Theresa May, for the last 2 years, I think it's a little bit more than 2 years, has been negotiating what's been called Brexit. What this boils down to is the Britain has decided that it wants to leave the European Union. It took this magnificent referendum with this great show of democracy, and the people decided that they wanted to leave. The question becomes, nobody really knew what leave meant. Even right now, at this very moment, nobody really knows what Brexit means. Now, you can imagine that this is somewhat of a worrying thing, seeing as Britain is set to leave the European Union on March 29th. And if nothing is in place, they are going to crash out in a Mad Max Brexit. Yesterday, the Withdrawal Agreement 2.0 was put up for a vote, the meaningful vote that the Parliament was going to get on whatever the government came back with as their deal. In this case, if you remember, the government's initial withdrawal agreement was voted down. The Prime Minister pushed the vote, essentially punted it, and even after the punt, she still wasn't able to secure enough support to get her withdrawal agreement through. Withdrawal Agreement 2.0 came up. Withdrawal Agreement 2.0 was effectively Withdrawal Agreement 1.0, with the extra addition of the Prime Minister trying harder to get the European Union to agree to concessions on this thing of the Northern Ireland Irish backstop. So yesterday, the Prime Minister did everything that she could, even with an emergency trip to Strasbourg, to try to get more concessions, having a meeting with Juncker in this kind of big show. But ultimately, what it boiled down to was a political casting on something that hadn't fundamentally changed, in which case Parliament voted it down. The question becomes, what's next? Right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what's next? Brexit, no one knows what it means. The Prime Minister's bill is voted down. The Prime Minister came out yesterday and gave somewhat of a strident wag of the finger, but also enumerated what was going to take place in regards to what she's going to lay out next. Another vote is taking place today on whether or not they're going to go with a no-deal Brexit. If they choose a no-deal Brexit, in fact, let me let her lay out the plans on what is expected to take place. I'm going to keep this short, so this is not going to be long, but I'm going to let Theresa May say it herself.
With a deal. And that the deal we've negotiated is the best and indeed the only deal available. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to set out briefly how the government means to proceed. 2 weeks ago, I made a series of commitments from this dispatch box regarding the steps we would take in the event that this House rejected the deal on offer. I stand by those commitments in full. Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. The Leader of the House will shortly make an emergency business statement confirming the change to tomorrow's business. This is an issue of grave importance for the future of our country. Just like the referendum, there are strongly held and equally legitimate views on both sides. For that reason, I can confirm that this will be a free vote on this side of the House. I have personally struggled with this choice, as I'm sure many other honourable members will. I'm passionate about delivering the result of the referendum, but I equally passionately believe that the best way to do that is to leave in an orderly way with a deal. And I still believe that there is a majority in the House for that course of action. And I'm conscious also of my duties as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of the potential damage to the Union that leaving without a deal could do when one part of our country is without devolved governance. I can therefore confirm that the motion will read that this House declines to approve leaving the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a framework on the future relationship on the 29th of March 2019, and notes that leaving without a deal remains the default in UK and EU law unless this House and the EU ratify an agreement. I will return to the House to open the debate tomorrow and take interventions from honourable members, and to ensure the House is fully informed in making this historic decision. The Government will tomorrow publish information on essential policies which would need to be put in place if we were to leave without a deal. These will cover our approach to tariffs and the Northern Ireland border, among other matters. If the House votes to leave without a deal on the 29th of March, it will be the policy of the Government to implement that decision. If the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the Government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50. If the House votes for an extension, the Government will seek to agree that extension with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face.
And the Prime Minister is right that voting, for a deal without an extension, voting for an extension without a deal doesn't solve their issue. But it does give them more time to try to figure out what they're going to do. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister ran down the clock. So just to recap what she's saying here, and for Jeremy Corbyn's response, you can look at the other video. That was a longer video. I'll put the link at the bottom. But what it boils down to is her motion was defeated, meaning what the government wanted was shot down. So the government, Theresa May, being the head of that government, for the most part, can't govern at this point. They don't have a deal that can go through Parliament. So she's going with, I guess you could say, the last few options that she has available and that she told Parliament that she would allow. She gave them a meaningful vote. They used that meaningful vote to shoot down her bill. So she's allowing a vote on a no-deal Brexit because the Brexiteers want just a clean break. There's no majority for a clean break in Brexit in that way, so they're going to put this on the table to vote it yay or nay. If they vote yes on this, meaning they want a no-deal Brexit, then negotiations will stop, and on the 29th, that's pretty much the end of it. They would go through their procedures in order to deal with the no-deal Brexit scenario. If they vote no on no-deal Brexit, then the question becomes, well, what do you want? Because at this point, on the 29th, you're leaving without any plan in place. So the next option in this case will be, do you want to leave with a deal that's something other than this deal? But that's a little weird because Theresa May has said that the only deal available is this deal, and the European Union has said they're not doing any further negotiations. Or the extension, or are you doing something other than this deal? The other things that are on the table are referendums, because again, you're in a situation where Parliament doesn't seem to be able to make a decision on this matter, or another election. Now, it's not that they want another election, but they may be forced into another election because, again, Parliament can't make a decision on this matter. Now, another election is what Jeremy Corbyn is angling for, and for the most part, every incentive in the world was with him and Labour voting this down with this idea of creating a crisis, hopefully being able to take power within the context of that crisis. The wild part about this is Theresa May, you would imagine at this point, will be what they said, the last gasp saloon or something to that effect, or the long drink saloon. But you can imagine that she's on her last leg. You would think she was on her last leg. It's very possible, though, that the Tories are in such bad shape that they were going to cling to Theresa May like grim death if this went into an election. Meaning they may not have any other horse but Theresa May to run with, even though she has brought them to this particular precipice. So that is what is taking place with Brexit right now. That vote is going to take place today, by the way. So I'm waiting to see what the vote turns out to be. The expectation is that it gets voted down. I'll end this here because I want this one to be relatively quick, good, under 10 minutes. That's exactly what I wanted. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the content through PayPal or Patreon, particularly if you find yourself coming back here often. And my wife and I have been doing Patreon appreciation shows on Sunday. 1 p.m. on Sunday. Those shows have been awesome. And they've been getting very many views, and they've been doing extraordinarily well. So those are saved specifically for patrons, in addition to extra content that I've been adding recently. So if you enjoy the content, please consider supporting. That said, you all have a good day, and I'll see you shortly. I'm doing a few of these because I'm trying to test whether or not there's a large segment of support for smaller videos, and still doing the larger videos, maybe 1 or 2 like a day, but also filling the gaps with smaller videos. So this is somewhat of a test, and I'm trying to see what gives better results. All right, guys, I'll see you guys shortly because I have a slew of these. Thanks all.